Hello out there, and welcome back to another episode of Bo&Joe. I'm Bo.
I'm Joe.
And today, we are going to do a little back and forth like we typically do. I do want to give a little disclaimer before we get in. We are 4 shows deep now, and I want to make sure that our public understands that we don't necessarily believe these ideas. We don't necessarily endorse the ideas.
Right.
But it is a very interesting topic to discuss.
Right.
Right. So today, I am going to present for you. I've decided, let's talk about our moon.
Oh. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yes, this should be good. So, what do you know about our moon? What is the official scientific explanation, thoughts, and everything on it?
Okay. Are you talking myths and legends, or are you actually talking about astrophysics? And
I'm talking about actual science. What do you know that's actual science?
Okay. Wow. Let me brush up on my third-year-old me.
30-year-old me. Huh?
I mean, not third. Third grade.
So let's yeah, 30-year-old me. Yeah. Yep.
Well, you see how great this is going.
This is going to be epic. Absolutely epic. So looks like there's plus one person that's going to learn about the moon today.
Ah, come on. Okay, no. So, okay.
It's not made of cheese, by the way.
Oh, damn it. You ruined it. You ruined it, man. That was my opening line. Okay, no, but seriously, though. So, what I remember, it's relatively young in comparison to the Earth, right? The Earth is, about 5 billion years old. The moon was supposedly not the only satellite that we had. I know that previously, and again, that's why I was alluding to historical, or not historical, I guess you could say legends, about having dual satellites. But it was how do you say... I don't know if I should say this because I don't think this is scientific. I think I'm more leaning towards the legend than I am the scientific. Could you please explain the scientific? Because
all right, so you pretty much got the base of it, right? The moon is younger than the Earth. Yeah. We do believe that to be the case. There's also a series of thoughts that some people believe that the moon is actually part of the Earth. That there was a collision back when the Earth was forming, and that the debris formed into the moon.
Gotcha.
There's also a theory that the moon was from a different system or from somewhere else, and Earth's gravity swept it up
and then carried it.
Right, and so there's literally dozens of ideas you could postulate as to how we got the moon or where it's from.
But there's mysteries, right?
That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to talk about is NASA.
Oh shit.
So yeah, I mean, we might as well dive right into it and get real. So the first thing we know that for everybody's knowledge, the Apollo program started in 1969, ran to 1972, but there was a lot of buildup. Now, those are the actual missions. There was a lot of buildup to that started right around the 1960 area, and there was so much that happened that I'm really going to do my best to try and capture it all into 1 hour that we have.
Okay.
So the first thing is the moon itself is 400 times smaller than our sun. That's pretty substantial number in itself. 400 times smaller than our sun. But did you know that it's also 400 times closer to us than the sun?
Wow.
Both numbers 400.
Yeah.
Now, you know how I feel about coincidence.
Yeah.
So I found that very interesting. It's 400 times smaller. It's also 400 times closer. It is also at this distance, it is the perfect size in the sky to match the sun. The sun and the moon are the same size when viewed from Earth.
Which is one of the mysteries, right?
Right. That's very curious. Yeah. Why do we have eclipses? Why do we...
Why is it so perfectly placed?
Why is it perfectly placed?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people, and we're just going to dive right into it. There's a lot of people who say the moon is fake. Or not fake, but...
artificial.
Artificially created by another race, obviously, because humans have not done that. So... There's also a theory of thought that says that the moon is hollow, that it's actually a ship. So there's variances in how extreme you could take this. And I want to touch on both and kind of see where your thought process is after you get the information, see what you think.
Okay.
And, of course, viewers, listeners will be able to do the same.
Right.
So I started off with Apollo 17. That was the very last mission to the moon. And it... yeah, that was the last mission to the moon.
Right.
I don't know why I'm saying that, because I apparently didn't make any notes for it. But that's the last one, apparently in 1972.
Oh, right. Okay.
So,
I didn't know that. Cool.
During that... Oh, here it is. I should have just kept reading. During the final mission, the shots, the photographs that were taken from the guy who was doing the photographs, and I understood that they actually handed off the camera, so they each got a picture of themselves.
Oh, wow.
So
moon selfies.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call it a moon selfie because you didn't take it yourself.
Well, I mean, yeah, but okay, keep going.
We'll call it moon not selfies.
Yes, moon not selfies. I like
moon
that.
no selfie.
We'll make a shirt.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, so during these shots, one of the curious things is they had this hovering blue flame that was taken in the horizon in the background. Okay. Now, there's more than one photo where they took this, and it was literally like this eerie blue flame. And I will see if I can get Maria to pull that up for us.
Gotcha.
While we do it, so that while you'll actually have a visual for it, maybe we'll be able to put it in the put it up into any videos that we make.
Right. Cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's great to visualize it. You know, to actually, I think if I'm not mistaken, a while ago. Long time ago, about 2 years ago, we were talking about this, and you showed me a video, or that included, I think, this picture. Probably. It looked like a burst. It looked very strange, a very eerie photo.
Yeah, it looked like a candle, like the head of a candle that was burning, but blue.
Right. And
the astronauts that were there actually were recorded as having done a lot of contact back to NASA, complaining, we don't know what this is. Can we, can you give us some feedback? What should we do? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of I don't want to say misnomer, but it was one of those scenarios where it was, man, I am just scatterbrained.
That's all right.
There's so much to cover, so.
I hear you, man, especially when something this interesting and peculiar.
Yeah, absolutely. But as it turns out, here it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah, it is haunting, man.
So I'm not sure, that's obviously not a trick of the light.
Yeah.
So, well, not that there's light on the moon anyway.
Right.
But it kind of, as I said, it kind of looks like something is there broadcasting the light.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's aliens or anything.
No, I hear you. But, I mean, it's...
My hair's not crazy enough for me to say aliens. No.
Yeah. But, I mean, we have to include this because the visuals of it's a haunting image. I mean, it's pretty impressive in the sense that it's kind of... Like you said, it looks sort of like a candle,
right?
But in a grander, or not grander, more how do you say, gargantuan, grandiose. Like a grandiose. Yes, exactly. That's a better word. A grandiose statement candle, like flashing in the middle of space. It's amazing, man. It looks really
so I first off, when I saw that, I was like, that seems pretty hardcore. That something is not normal. There was no investigation done on it. NASA told them to stop talking about it. It's just a trick of the light. There's an old joke from Men in Black where it's swamp gas out of Venus or whatever. So I imagine that's what they were talking about.
That's a hell of a bit of swamp gas, man.
I mean it's beautiful in like you said, kind of a haunting way.
Yeah.
And viewers, or listeners, if you're not able to view this on YouTube, by all means go and Google it. It's you could just type in blue flame of the moon or blue fire moon, something to that
Apollo
effect.
17, something.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can find it. Specifically, if you type in dark mission files, NASA scientists fired, that will. Granted, we're not endorsing that article in any form.
Right. It's just a
but
quick
that
way.
Image is you're right. That's a quick way to get to that image. That being said, what a lot of people don't realize is that for that Apollo mission, and I may have the Apollo numbers mixed up because there was a bunch, but for one of the Apollo missions, I'll say that it's a little better.
Okay.
One of the Apollo missions, they ejected or shot off their lunar module, their landing module, and it hit the moon. When it hit the moon, it caused a reverberation unlike anything that anybody's ever heard.
Okay.
Well, I say unlike anything, but in reference to that scale. The astronauts themselves say that it sounded like a bell.
Wow.
Now, that's pretty substantial. Not only are you in space, where sound, does travel. There's a misnomer that sound doesn't travel in space.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, but still, like a bell? Wow.
Yeah, so they said that it rang like a bell for over an hour.
An hour?
An hour. And then, later that mission, I think it was the Stage 3 module, they ejected that, and that hit the moon with the equivalent of, I think it's like 11 tons of dynamite.
Wow.
And they said that caused the moon to reverberate like a gong for 3 hours, sorry. 3 hours. They had no explanation for it. They've never experienced anything like that. Wow. And then this was repeated again later, maybe potentially by the way, that was November 20th, 1969.
Okay.
I actually wrote the date down because it was substantial enough. So they eventually did it again with a different module, and this time it lasted longer than 4 hours.
Wow.
So the interesting part about this is that the way that it reacts, the bell, the bell shape, or bell sound, I should say, is symbolic of being hollow, right? So
yeah, so what I was going to say.
It's well, you can't be a bell if you're solid,
right?
So a lot of people have speculated that maybe it's not artificial, maybe it just has lots of caverns, and that's a feasible thought.
So it is a cheese.
There you go, it's a cheese. Mystery solved. All right, guys, thanks for coming.
Close it up.
So so some of the samples that were brought back, they looked at the rocks and they found specifically that these rocks indicated a well, first off, there were a lot of minerals in these rocks that don't exist in nature.
Okay.
Like brass.
Wow.
Yeah, brass is...
They found brass?
They found brass in some of these moon rocks. So...
Holy moly, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I'm looking at... just taking a glance at some of my notes here.
Yeah.
These lunar rocks, they contain brass, mica, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, amphibel.
Okay, what was that?
As well as titanium, uranium-236, and neptunium-237.
Uranium?
Yes. None of these items exist in nature by themselves.
Uranium?
Uranium-236. I don't even know what the hell Neptunium-237 is.
Me neither.
But it sounds amazing.
I didn't want to ask.
No, I don't even know what amphibel is. I didn't have time to get that in depth in it.
What are you saying, man?
There's no way for this conversation to end well if I keep going.
It's fine.
But like I said, none of these elements are found in nature.
Okay.
Furthermore, they said that the rocks that they looked at suggest that the heavier material that is on the moon is found on the outside, which would mean that everything on the inside, the density on the inside would be a lot lighter, which could mean it is hollow or potentially does have caves, like a very deep cave system.
Wow, that's super... Wow, okay.
Yeah, I know, that's pretty crazy. They say if it's not hollow, if it does have a core, then the core of that planet is so unlike Earth in a way that we could never theorize. We would have to geologically do experiments and stuff on it so that we could come close to it. But as it stands now, based on what we know about Earth mechanics, they're nothing similar.
Wow.
Which brings us to another point. The materials, we know for sure at this point that the materials and the minerals and everything that's found on Earth do not match Earth. So you can rule out the thought that there was a collision, and the moon is part of that.
Gotcha.
Furthermore, this gets more complicated when you think, well, what if something erupted or blew up next to the Earth and the moon is some form of correlation to that? Not possible. Because the Earth, while being bigger than the moon, the Earth's gravity would be higher than the moon, so all that debris would have gone to Earth.
Right.
So
that's another question I had.
What's that?
I don't know if this is part of your conversation, but
throw it out there.
The idea of the size of it.
Of the moon or Earth?
Of the moon.
Okay.
The specific nature of how far it is from Earth, like you said.
Right.
I mean, how is that even possible, right? I mean, that's
So that is part of my notes here, is that literally nowhere else in our galaxy.
Right.
Or I say our galaxy, I mean our solar system. Nowhere else in our solar system is there a moon that is tidal locked of this size in reference to its home planet.
That's what I meant, because I mean, it's a huge satellite for just a small planet.
It is, exactly. And our gravity realistically is not high enough to have wrangled that from even something as substantial as the sun, which is obviously 400 times away.
Yeah.
So the sun would have had a greater magnetic pull over our moon than we would have. So again, that's another scientific reason for why the moon should not be there.
Okay.
But the idea that the moon is in any way a part of Earth is invalid.
It's gone. Okay.
We've established that it cannot be. Furthermore, the rocks that they brought back had traces. Let me take a look at my notes. There was so much here that I scrambled to take notes as I was doing all this work. So for the folks at home, I apologize for
that's fine, man.
For the delay. So I'm gonna skip up a little bit.
Okay.
There was other parts that were found in the rocks, but
yeah, you mentioned uranium. You said
right,
Newtonian,
and Neptunian.
Neptunian. I already renamed it. Oh, that's great.
Maria, can you look up what Neptunian 237 is?
Yes, please. I'd love to know.
I'm curious. Yeah, I have no idea.
Sounding element.
So, the Sea of Crisis. That's one of the large areas on the moon, right? A Russian group in 1970 came back with rocks.
Okay.
And these rocks had rust-proof iron in them.
What?
Rust-proof iron.
Okay.
And we, in our current state of technology, cannot produce rust-proof iron.
Yeah.
So, and that, of course, that doesn't happen in nature either. That's not a default thing. So, all right, Maria's just handed 237. Yep, so Maria's looking up Neptunian 237 for us. That's got a pretty cool name.
That's great.
It's going to be really depressing to find out it's like sea salt. I mean, it's not. But...
Himalayan sea salt.
So, NP93.
Okay.
It looks like Neptunium.
So it's irradiated. So it's another irradiated.
Right.
Okay, interesting.
Exactly.
Okay, so why is it? So again, why is there radiation elements in the moon? What the heck?
Well, and that's another thing. I mean, first off, it doesn't have an atmosphere, right? So it can't stop the normal radiation that's out in space.
Okay.
So, that could explain some of it. But I don't think that Neptunian 237 is a byproduct of natural radiation. I say natural radiation, there's a lot of scientists who are going to hate me for saying that. I'm just talking about your generic space radiation, if there is such a thing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a radiologist.
I know. There's gamma radiation. Gamma radiation is one of those.
Yeah, that made the Hulk.
Yep. There you go. There you go. See.
Yep. See. All right. Now, mystery's done. Moon's full of Hulk.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
But could you go back to the so it rang like a bell? That's still ringing in my head, man. I mean, that's a hell of,
no pun intended.
Yeah. No, but seriously though, I mean, something that's a. I mean, we kind of like blazed by that, but that's
we did blaze by it, but I mean, it's something that even today, scientists cannot explain.
That's what I mean.
When it happened, and this information was conveyed to NASA to Mission Control. They literally had no explanation. They handed it off to scientists, and scientists had no explanation.
So that's it?
And it was just, well, we don't know. Let's move on.
Really?
And it has never been addressed. Ever.
My God.
They've recreated it at least 3 times. So it happens. Now, here's an interesting counterpoint that people talk about, though. When we left the moon, we left seismographic machines on the moon so that we could measure any activity that happens.
Oh, cool.
Now, realistically, I believe I saw the number was about 3,000... My fault.
No.
About 3,000 earthquakes happen... moonquakes.
Moonquakes, yeah.
Yeah, about 3,000 moonquakes a year happen on the moon. Of these moonquakes, the sensors pick up all of them. And they found is that the vast majority of them... come from comets or meteors or meteorites striking the moon.
Right.
But there's also a lot of them that really cause the bigger ones happen when the Earth gets closer to the moon. You know, because of the way the orbit is done.
Yeah.
There are times when the moon is just slightly closer to Earth than it is in others. And when that happens, there is a natural... I don't know if it's a word, but I'm going to use it because that's what I do. Gravitic. It's a badass word, actually.
It's badass, yeah.
So anyway, there's a gravitic effect on it that it causes like a crushing effect, as you would expect anything to do in gravity, based on all the sci-fi movies we've seen and the knowledge we've consumed.
Right.
And they hear that those large ones happen when the moon is closest to us. Now they also say that there was the meteorite, they were watching, they wanted to see what happens when a meteorite of substantial size struck the moon so that they could measure the Bell effect.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And they finally got one, and I didn't write down the date that happened.
Okay.
At least I don't think I did. Let me double check. No, I didn't write down the date.
But did it ring like the same thing? Or?
No. I did write down the date. Man, I have got to learn to read my own writing better.
No, that's fine.
May the 13th, 1972.
Okay.
A meteor struck the moon. There was no ring.
What?
None.
Was it in a different place?
So, and that's one of the questions that people... It had to be a different place, right? So, that's one of the things that people say is that if it struck in a different place and the moon is hollow, maybe it hit one of the pieces underneath that's sturdying the moon.
Like a stud finder?
Kind of, yes, yeah. Something to that effect. But the reason why science was looking forward to, and I use those terms loosely, looking forward to a meteor of that size hitting it, is that would have given them a better idea of what where the moon's core stood. And if it hits it and it rings out, then depending on the volume of the ring, they could be able to determine how hollow or how thick.
They measure the reverberation and stuff.
And it didn't happen.
Wow.
There was no reverberation at all.
That's impressive, man.
So I don't know about impressive. I mean,
come on.
Compared to the first three.
That's what I mean.
So I don't have an explanation for that. Neither does modern science, as far as I know.
Okay.
But there's more.
Oh.
So, yeah. So another thing, literally every astronaut who has gone to the moon, which I think is 16, it's like 14 or 16 at this point, all of them have come back and all of them have suffered from depression.
Okay.
Every last one of them.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So to give you an example, Buzz Aldrin, who beforehand was very vivacious, he was very detail-oriented, family-oriented and everything. When he came back from the moon, he was depressed. He was diagnosed as manic depressive, I believe. Wow. I may have that wrong. I may be thinking of one of the other guys. But he was depressed for sure.
Okay.
He ended up 2 years after he got back, he got divorced from his wife of a very long time, would eventually get remarried. And we're talking about Buzz Aldrin.
Right.
Fell so far in his depression, he ended up a used car salesman.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know
that, man.
So
my God, from
being on the moon.
Oh my God, man.
So, and then,
to selling Cadillacs? Are you serious?
I didn't say it was Cadillacs, but yeah,
I mean, come on, at least give them credit, right?
All right, so they might have been Porsches, I guess.
I mean, hopefully.
Probably not.
No, that made him a commie, man. No, I'm just joking.
Wow. Okay, so Neil Armstrong, when he came back, he was extremely withdrawn and depressed.
Okay.
And the list goes on and on. There's no reason to go on through it.
Interesting you mentioned that particular person. We'll talk about it in a later podcast, but keep going.
Okay, yeah. All right, there's a lot about Armstrong and Aldrin, actually.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions that was asked to all of the astronauts is, why? Why are you unhappy? Why are you depressed? You've done something that only, in the last guy's case, 15 other men have ever done. And each one of them just said,
wow.
They just mumble. Like, they just kind of shrug, and there's nothing they can say.
After being on the surface on the moon.
So there's a theory.
Oh, no.
And this is where we step a little more into the fringe. And
that's fine.
I hope if our audience isn't into this kind of theme, I hope they just stick with us long enough to let us finish it.
Wait, get your tinfoil hat on, people.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You can't see it, but I'm doing my sucralose.
Yes.
Aliens. So, no, and that's the truth, right? There is a string of thought that says that they were depressed because they saw such amazing things on the moon, on the far side, which people typically call it the dark side, but that's incorrect.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
it's the far side of the moon.
It's the far side of the moon. It's not the dark side.
Doesn't sound as cool.
You're right. It doesn't sound as cool. So they're saying is that these guys, Buzz Aldrin, for example, was recorded, and this is a matter of public knowledge that he was recorded saying that their ship was being followed by a beam of light or a structure of light. He had trouble describing it. It was like rainbow light.
Wow.
So he was recorded having said that. You know, of course, during the transmissions, there were some ham radio operators here on Earth that were listening. And there was a lot of stuff that was being transferred back and forth between...
That wasn't broadcasted.
That was not being broadcast by NASA.
Oh, yeah.
Which brings me to another interesting point. NASA deleted all of their moon footage.
What?
All of it.
That doesn't... What?
Right. What is the point? I don't understand it myself.
That's
but
like...
They have no more moon footage. Nothing.
What?
Except for what they've archived from after their cut. The original cut, they deleted everything that's not already public knowledge.
That's extremely, extremely suspect, man.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree 100%.
What? That should be a treasure. I mean, that's...
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a feat of humankind, man.
So,
what are you...
Somebody once said, why would you, after spending all this money to get to the moon, why would you not just release the raw footage to people and be like, here, look how amazing this was? There's only one reason. there's something on the moon you don't want people to know about.
Right.
Well, I mean, the second reason is that you faked it.
Right, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I don't believe that it was faked.
Yeah,
I'm not one of those guys. There's entirely too much evidence to support we were there.
I'm 100% with you on that, man. I don't think it was fake at all. I mean, it's a great story, right? It makes for great fiction.
I agree.
But I don't believe it.
It might make for a decent movie, maybe, if you found the right people.
Yeah.
So in March 7th, 1971, NASA reported their gear that was still on the moon, that they left on the moon, reported what they could only describe as a water wind on the moon.
Water wind.
A water wind.
I can't wait. Let me try and visualize that. Water wind.
Well, think about it. If a child came up to you and you said, well, "How's the weather?" and they say there's a water wind outside, what would you think of it?
Water spout, maybe? I mean...
Well, you're not far off. You're not far off of it. So what it turned out to be is water vapor.
Oh.
It was a water vapor cloud, I guess. Okay. So what they found, and Maria's handing us some information here, water on the moon came from solar wind. Astronomers now think most of the water trapped in rocks on the moon's surface originated from the solar wind, not comet impacts.
Okay.
So
interesting.
That is interesting. But here's the funny part about this. When it initially happened, when the devices started reporting this, NASA said, well, we can explain that. There's still water reservoirs on the devices that we left on the moon, and so they just ruptured. That's all it is. It's just water vapor from those things.
Oh, okay.
But the problem is, this water covered 100 square miles, lasted 14 hours.
Yeah.
Realistically, how do you get that much water that long from those small containers?
They would probably need twice as many rockets to get that much water.
You're right. But also think about this. What is the likelihood that both canisters would rupture at the same moment?
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it does. I like I said, I believe in coincidence, but I don't. No, not at all.
Yeah. My God, though.
They also discovered that moon rocks have a slight magnetic charge.
What?
Like they're slightly magnetic. They're not strong enough to pick up like a pin or whatever, but they do have a slight magnetic charge.
Okay.
So let's see. The moon also has no volcanic activity. We know that. But a lot of they have these really, really massive craters that you've seen that aren't jagged. They look like little indentions in the moon.
And they're shallow, right?
Some of them are shallow. Some of them are kind of deep.
Okay.
Believe it or not, and she'll probably find this interesting, they're called Marias.
Oh, wow. So... There you go.
But these Marias, we've now established, science has established, that these are caused from something internal to the moon, not external. They're not comet crashes. They're not, meteor crashes. These are formed almost too perfectly to be from an outside source.
But there's no volcanic activity?
Exactly.
That's a very peculiar thing.
That's the thing, right? Science can say these Marias are caused by the moon. Well, how are they caused?
Exactly.
By the moon?
Yeah.
So, I looked it up. I didn't see any viable explanation. They say it's volcanic activity. But at the same time, they say the moon is volcanically dormant. There's no evidence that there's ever been a volcano on it.
So how could it be produced from that's extremely peculiar.
So it says, Maria's handed me this. The lunar Marias are large, dark, basaltic plains on Earth's moon formed by ancient volcanic eruptions.
Oh.
They were dubbed Maria, which is Latin for seas, by early astronomers.
Oh, okay. So ancient.
Ancient volcanoes.
Okay. So it's dormant. It's basically like a dormant caldera, I guess.
Essentially, right.
Okay.
Right. So it was in one of these Marias that one of the Apollo crews tried to drill, because we want to know what the surface of the moon is like. Now, they had these specialized made drills that were supposed to be able to cut through a good amount of stone without dulling. What they found is that after 3 inches, they couldn't go any further.
3 inches?
The drills were tearing up because they were drilling into titanium.
Titanium?
Titanium.
Okay, yeah, they're gonna get destroyed.
yeah. So we know that the moon is a huge source, or is a huge container of titanium. And I say container loosely, but why is it titanium?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, right? One of the videos I watched was of the astronauts talking post their trip. And I will say they looked like the most morose looking group I think I've ever seen for having done what they just did. They were sweating, they were looking down, they looked upset and unhappy. not at all what you would expect, like a national hero who's been to the moon to come back and look like.
Man, yeah.
These guys look like they had seen, if the audience will humor me for a moment, the Dick of Doom.
Oh my god.
So they looked completely morose.
Oh my god, man.
So, yeah, I mean, but they were talking about it. They said, and I forget, I think it was Aldrin, but I might be thinking of Armstrong. There was one of them that was talking about when you walk on the moon, one of the interesting things is you never know what your footing is going to be like.
Your footing?
So, your footing. He said, at some point you may take a step and you may only be like an inch into the soil. He said there were some parts where we would take a step and we'd be 4 or 5 inches in the soil. So none of that were they able to dictate by appearance. He said mostly by when you got closer to the edge of a crater, then that's when you could see, or not see, but that's when you'd experience the deeper sides of, I guess we'll say ash.
Yeah.
Or dust. We call it moon dust, yeah.
Okay. But wait, titanium, and correct me if I'm wrong, and forgive me, audience, but I thought titanium was made in the explosion of supernovae.
I don't know.
So that's
Maria, can you check and see if...
So that's one of the rarest types of metals, right? We have gold, we have titanium.
For Earth, it is. But the moon is not. It is teeming with titanium.
That's what I mean. I mean, that's a very peculiar thing, because if it's something that only is created via supernovae or explosions of not just explosions of stars... I mean, this is a long time ago that I read about this, so please, Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to mislead the audience, but I thought that it was created via explosions of stars. So why would the moon have so much titanium?
It is, apparently it is loaded with it. It is what it has the most of.
That's amazing, man.
So whereas we use titanium for spacecraft and some aircraft and everything, and now there's trace elements of it in rings and various bits of jewelry as we find little more and more here on Earth. But if we tap the moon, if we mine the moon for titanium, it would be, I don't want to say infinite because the moon is obviously not infinite, but it would be more than we could utilize within a couple of generations for sure.
That's amazing. And a little tidbit information there. The School of Mines here in Colorado has just started, I kid you not, space mining course.
Oh, I mean, with that's okay. That makes sense. With Donald Trump having formed the Space Force, that makes sense. Yeah. And of course, the Space Force is another conversation we should have on a different podcast.
Sure. Yeah.
That's going to be pretty amazing.
Hey, tinfoil hat, aliens.
Aliens, exactly. Exactly. We should get a Sukalos mask. just have it mounted. I don't even know if that's a thing. I guess we could take a Mike Myers mask and just not saying he looks like Mike Myers because he doesn't.
No, but still, man, we got to do it. That's amazing. That's a great idea. But yeah, keep going. So titanium.
Yeah, so there's a lot of titanium, but as they were drilling, they found that after 3 or 4 inches, what they found was hardened titanium, almost like formed titanium,
like forged, like it was
oh my god, like plating.
Man. Oh my god.
So I mean, they haven't come out and said that. But the damage done to the drills would be indicative of that exactly. So Maria just handed us this. Which part? When a star blows up in supernovas, they fuse lighter elements together into heavier ones. This seeds the universe with ingredients that go into making stars, planets, and even people. Some of the elements produced in supernovas are radioactive, which means they are unstable and decay into lighter elements. When this happens, radioactive substance gives off energy in the form of particles called positrons.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yep, so we'll skip forward a little bit. One of the radioactive elements created in a supernova is titanium.
Okay.
Specifically, titanium-44, which denotes the total number of protons and neutrons in the atom.
That's why it's such a stable...
It decays into calcium. That's interesting.
That's a hell of another conversation.
And gives off high-energy X-ray photons. So I guess you're correct.
But still, man, like that's why I was so flabbergasted when you said that it was that much titanium. But now, again, putting my tinfoil hat on and thinking about if it's a plated, that is such a gargantuan amount of titanium, man.
Oh yeah, I mean
that has got to be
absolutely
just. I mean, that's mind-boggling.
So the current theory,
huge.
for those of our listeners who aren't in the know, titanium is considered by many to be an unbreakable metal once it's formed. I don't know how true that is, but that'd be an interesting thing to research if you're interested in that kind of thing.
But my God, man, that everything titanium
if the moon was a titanium sphere, Just imagine if it is hollow, if it is an artificial structure, and whoever it is coated it with titanium.
I wanted to, and forgive me for interrupting, but it's something that I wanted to take into account because I just think it's very relevant to the fact of what we're talking about. Apart from the fact of the moon being at a perfect distance from the Earth, one of the things we haven't talked about is what the moon does to the Earth. You know, like if it wasn't for the moon...
Talking about the tidal locking?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the moon, man... We wouldn't, I mean... I
don't know how true this next part is. Mm-hmm. So, don't hate me, and listeners at home don't hate. This is just something I've heard. I've done no research into it.
Yeah.
But I've heard that realistically, if we had no moon, it wouldn't be that different.
Oh, really?
That's what I heard. I don't remember where I saw that, but...
So is it rumor maybe what I...
No, what I know might be is more likely a rumor. You're talking actual science.
Right.
So I don't know how accurate my statement is, and I don't believe it necessarily, but I have heard that.
But you know, like there's also these different, apart from science, sci-fi books that talk about the moon breaking up and what would occur. What would occur. Right. Yeah, it would be catastrophic to...
Right, I have heard that, especially to like fauna and flora. You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, that's another point back to the, tinfoil hat saying... It kind of gives a lot of credence, right? Not only is it in the perfect distance, but also it's locked into specific tidal lock situation where it allows us to have, the flourishing of life.
Right.
I mean, that's
a sizable thing.
Yeah.
Now, it's important to note, as we said earlier, this is the only satellite in our entire solar system that is tidally locked of this size.
Right.
So another thing is they were talking about the moon isn't a perfect circle. A lot of people think it is. Mm-hmm. It's kind of pear-shaped. Just slightly pear-shaped.
I didn't know that.
In that it starts off at one size and gets slightly bigger after the equator.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Obviously, if it was a spinning body, a celestial body, it would be more bulky at the middle, like Earth is at the equator.
Okay.
So they know that it is kind of pear-shaped. It's not a perfect circle, but... It's something that I learned when doing the research on this. I was not aware of it.
Yeah, me neither, man. That's awesome.
Let's see. We're still hitting on the astronauts a little bit more. Mm-hmm. These astronauts. So one of the theories that I heard is that they saw something that would have potentially dramatically changed how they see things, maybe life, how they see society, how they see humankind.
Man.
And unfortunately, I'm going to do my Sukalos thing and say aliens, right?
That's fine.
So a lot of people think that when they got to the far side of the moon, they saw bases and they saw... in fact, I believe Buzz Aldrin has gone on record a number of times to indicate that he has seen saucers, or he did see saucers when he was out there.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that there was a code word for aliens for the Apollo crew. Mm-hmm. And it was Santa Claus.
Oh,
so they would come on the radio and they would say, "I can tell you Santa Claus is real."
Wow.
And what a lot of people believe they were saying is that now that we've gone around the moon, we've been to the backside of the moon, Santa Claus is real. So,
wow.
And if you listen to some of their broadcasts, they mention Santa Claus in almost every mission.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and one of them, the guy, he said he comes around them. They came around the moon, and he said, "I can tell you Santa Claus is real." And a lot of people say, "Oh, that's because it was almost Christmas time."
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about it, but
that's amazing, man.
That's pretty interesting. So they're saying these guys are depressed because they've been sworn to silence. Now, Buzz Aldrin, I don't know if he is he still alive? Do you know?
Buzz Aldrin, I believe he died.
I think he did recently, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you double check that, Maria? Buzz Aldrin, alive or dead?
Yeah. So, but I remember...
Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut.
Buzz Aldrin, yeah. So I remember hearing... I had at least seen one video where he was talking about it, and that... He is also recorded as having said something that a lot of people have overanalyzed, and probably a better subject for an entirely different episode.
Phobos.
Mars, yes.
Phobos.
He was recorded as saying, "We need to get back to Mars and take care of the problem."
Wait. Back?
He said, "Get back to Mars." And the broadcaster said, "Did you mean the moon?" He stared at her and goes, "Yeah, the moon." So,
because I'm sorry. I thought you meant Phobos because I remember that he was. I don't know if it was Buzz Aldrin or if it was. No, he's alive. Is he alive? No, he's dead.
I don't. He died in No, that's his wife. His wife, Louise Driggs Cannon, died in 2012.
He's probably alive.
He retired in 1971.
He's the one who went to Antarctica, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he started, I believe, isn't that he had problems with his heart?
Right, yeah. So, yes. So
he is still alive. Okay, he's 88 years old.
It was him also that mentioned that there was a monolith at Phobos.
On Phobos,
that we had to investigate. That's what I thought you were referring to.
No. Mars is a whole nother beautiful conversation we can have for our listeners another day.
Yeah, man.
But
that, what? Back to Mars?
He said we need to get back to Mars, and the announcer was like, don't you mean the moon? And he's like,
sure.
Yes, that's exactly what I meant. So... oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about for Mars.
Oh my god.
I don't want to get into it. We'll save that for another episode.
That's amazing, man.
It is pretty amazing. So he, and I think to some extent Armstrong, most of the astronauts have reported having seen things. Mm-hmm. Now a lot of this has been brushed off as space dementia, light cases of space dementia, nervousness, anxiety.
Yeah.
Realistically, I understand, right? Going out into space, heading to the moon, I think I might flip out a little bit too. Yeah. I'd be ecstatic all the time. My adrenaline levels would be through the roof.
Yeah, man.
But
I mean, getting to see something like that.
Oh, sure.
Not even life changing. That's just something else.
Soviet scientist Nikolai Komarov, and I hope I didn't butcher that too horribly.
Okay.
Once photographed a gas eruption on the moon. Had never been seen before.
A gas eruption.
A gas eruption on the moon. It detected in his scientific findings.
Okay, yeah.
He found that there was a lot of different gases in it, but one of them was carbon compounds. So what is carbon? What does that mean?
The base element of life.
Right. So he found it was a reddish cloud, or not the cloud, but there were reddish tints in it, which is carbon. And I don't have the full report on how he determined it was carbon compounds. Mm-hmm. But when he published the photo, it was... People said, no, this is insubstantial swamp gas, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Less than a year later, an observatory took a picture of another gas eruption from the moon, exactly the same, with carbon compounds.
Wow.
So now they know that is a thing. They don't know where it's coming from. They don't know why it's coming from. But in the years that followed, mm-hmm. that is when people started seeing moving lights. Flashing.
Oh,
you've probably heard of those, red and green lights moving on the moon.
Yeah.
Almost like you would see from an airplane's warning lights.
Right.
Now, both professional and amateur astrologists have caught this on footage, mm-hmm. or caught this footage. And I've seen a bunch of it, and I don't have an explanation for it. And I think there's too many examples and too many samples for me to think it's fake.
Yeah, and not just that, dude, but think about it this way. Modern astronomers and astrophysicists both are using a new way of looking for habitable planets by visual...
By the light, right?
Not just light, but by carbon deposits. So they're able to actually, with telescope, a different type of telescope, mind you, but they're able to actually visualize whether or not there's carbon deposits, which for them means it's either habitable or has the possibility of life.
Right. So I remember hearing about that.
That's amazing, man. The fact that they're seeing that on the moon, that's insane.
That was like years and years and years ago.
That's insane, though.
So, yeah, I mean, and now, like I said, if you can go to YouTube and you can Google lights on the moon, and you'll see a dozen different videos. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was one guy, I'm going to give him a shout out here. His channel does a lot of material and things like this called Third Phase of Moon.
Okay.
He had recorded a series of lights, and I don't know if he had done it, but he had on his channel a series of lights, and he caught a lot of blowback from it.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting. Let's see. What else do we got?
Damn, man, that's mind-boggling.
Yeah, we did talk about the moon is way too large for Earth's gravity to have caught it.
Yeah.
Is that Maria's just presented us a picture here. Is that a gas eruption?
I don't know what it is, but it definitely looks spooky.
It looks a little suspect.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the only satellite in our solar system to face one direction all the time. A lack of spin.
Hence the dark side of the moon. Or the far side, like you said.
Right. They also expect that if the moon were following what we believe to be the standard rules for a satellite, it should have a slight wobble to it.
Okay.
Now, as a closing to this, for my facts, I want to close with something that's not necessarily a fact, but an observation. In 1966, Carl Sagan said, "A natural satellite cannot be hollow." So.
Oh, man. You just broke me.
How did that break you? Are you a Sagan fan?
I am, absolutely, yes. But
so,
wait. You need to unpack this for me, man.
Which part?
Why was he saying that?
I don't know.
I mean...
So, I'm gonna tell you a slightly unrelated story that I think I can hopefully bring full circle for you.
Yeah.
I recently listened to an audiobook of one of my favorite writers, Ernest Cline. Mm-hmm. At least I think that's his name. It'd be really shitty for me to get his name wrong.
It doesn't matter, man.
So, he's the guy who wrote Ready Player One.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, it may not be Ernest Cline. If it's not, I'm sorry.
You've been listening and reading a lot of stuff, man.
I have. I might call him Neil Armstrong at this point.
Yes, that's a
so
great
Neil Strong Einstein.
Neil Stein
Klein.
Einstein Klein.
Yeah. So, but
hey, man, at least it's not Ireland or Scotland.
So Maria has just brought up an image of one of the craters. Now that is not a Maria. That is an actual crater. Now, that crater, they sometimes see light beaming out of it, or so they thought. Mm-hmm. But the general understanding is that it's not actual light. It is reflecting sunlight, and it's ice.
Oh, wow.
So,
still, that's amazing.
That would be pretty amazing. But one of the things... So
the story you were saying about Ready Player One.
The guy who wrote Ready Player One did a follow-up novel called Armada. Mm-hmm. And Armada wasn't exactly the same storyline. Excuse me. But it had had similar elements, and in that, I'm not going to ruin the story for anybody. But in that, Carl Sagan is used as not only the super intellectual from a scientific standpoint, but also he was, I don't want to say government plant, but he had knowledge that he was told to disseminate to the world.
I hear what you're saying. Okay.
Right. So you see what I'm saying. Right. To help people assimilate to what might happen.
Right. Just follow a narrative delivered by him.
And so I was thinking there was, not too long ago, I remember hearing that there was a, I want to say congressional, that might be wrong as well. Mm-hmm. It's funny when you start talking about these things and you have to preface it with "I might be wrong."
It's okay.
It's funny to think how wrong you really are,
but at the same time, it's still a hell of an interesting conversation.
Exactly. This for the listeners at home. I am not a scientist. I'm not necessarily a fact finder. I do research things for conversation. I enjoy the conversation more than the science.
I mean, realistically, this blew my mind. That doesn't matter. I mean, this is. I learned a lot about things I hadn't even thought I knew. I mean, especially in regards to the nature of that. But keep going. You were saying, yeah.
No. So it's interesting to think that Sagan might have been given... Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot where I left off. There was a conference that was made that brought in people like Michio Kaku.
Really? In the book?
DeGrasse Tyson. No. In real life. This really happened. They brought in Stephen Hawking. Mm-hmm. I want to say Neil deGrasse Tyson was brought in. The extreme biologist, extreme
just a bunch of scientists,
linguist, and a bunch of people.
Linguists?
Yes, a bunch of these people were brought in for like a week, and they were behind closed doors.
Okay.
1 week after that happened, Stephen Hawking came out and said, "We should not be broadcasting out into space because anybody who's capable of hearing us will find us, and that's not necessarily a good thing."
Oh my God!
So. That was interesting to me. I put them together. Yeah. They may not be linked, but when I heard that, I was like, "Oh, he found out something." He was in a room with other people of his caliber, if such people exist.
Yeah.
He was in a room with people who are biologists. He was in a room with people who were linguists.
Linguists? I mean, that...
What do you... When you put those three together, there's only one recipe for me that fits.
Yeah, man.
So, and like I said, shortly after that, he came out and he said... don't trust, don't send out signals.
Yes.
But I think he was also one of the guys that said AI should have a cap. We should stop at some point.
The dangers of it, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's, again, AI could be a whole nother conversation.
Absolutely.
That meeting can be a whole nother conversation because that takes us in a different direction. But I will say one of the interesting things I found is that there was a fella, and I didn't record his name, everything was kind of in a blur at the time, but there was a fella who called NASA and said, "Hey, look, if you look at X sector or whatever on the moon, you'll see that this crater has a bridge on it.
Wait,
and it's never had a bridge on it before." And NASA said, "You're crazy. Thanks for help. Thanks for giving us the info, but thanks." And they told him no thanks, essentially. and he called somebody else, like a newspaper or something, and they looked it up, and sure enough, they saw the same bridge across one of the craters. Then they went back and they told NASA, they told one of their contacts in NASA who looked at it, and it was gone.
My God, man.
So they know there's so many photos out there of the moon, and you have to be careful because half of them are fake.
Yeah.
Like, and that we could say the same about Mars, right?
Yeah.
You and I have kind of touched on this in the background. There's a good chance for our listeners, give you a kind of a peek at one of our future episodes. There's a good chance that just about every photo you've seen from Mars is fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
not just Mars.
Yeah, not just Mars, right? That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
and so, you know what? I'm sorry to interrupt, but one thing that we haven't touched on, man, is something that I wanted to just at least have a tidbit of time to talk about is in history. Like, you remember at first, the first thing you talked to me about was what do you know about it?
Right.
So there's a lot of correlation, especially in occult information about the moon. It's extremely important, man. In a future episode, I'm even going to mention some of it that ties to. Well, I don't want to ruin the surprise, but let me just say that it's a very.
I like to.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yes.
There's no way I could say that sentence and not have it go negatively.
No, that's cool, but it's honestly it's extremely peculiar, in the sense of we have a lot of interesting things and information from the past that talk about the moon and its importance.
Right.
Not just as a celestial body, but in a deeper form. It's a very interesting topic, man.
Well, since you said that, the moon hasn't been present for all recorded history.
Oh, Jesus.
That's an interesting aspect. That there's a lot of... so, possibly pausing this subject,
yeah.
Did you know the name of the civilization that came before the Sumerians?
Proto-Sumerian?
No, they actually had a name.
Okay.
I don't know it. I just was hoping you knew it.
Wait, okay. So, technically speaking, if okay. The first were Lemurians before the Atlanteans.
Lemurians, I've heard, yeah.
And prior to that, the Hyperboreans.
There's another one.
Jesus.
Okay. I've done a lot of research about a lot of different topics. I want to bring a wide variety of stuff to our listeners. Mm-hmm. And you and I are both planning for future episodes.
Absolutely.
And in one of these episodes, for our listeners, just so you guys know, we're going to do a special episode where we're going to call it, whatever the title will be, Devil's Advocate.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to be awesome. That's going to be where one of us makes a case for something and the other one makes a counter case.
Right.
So you could call it debating, but it's going to be less of a debate and more of a, you said this, but what if?
Right. Right.
So,
to trying to see the both sides of the point, more of a objective view.
And we've got a lot of topics coming up. We're coming in towards the bottom of our hour.
Dang it!
So I just want to make sure our audience knows what's coming. Mm-hmm. At some point, we're going to talk about things that aren't fringe science. You know, we probably will have a discussion about modern politics. Maybe we'll touch on some of the current events that are happening. Maybe some psychological conversations.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we'll touch on everything. So don't think that we're just those weird guys, even if we are. But don't think that's all we are.
Yeah, I mean, this is just tinfoil hat time, guys.
These are just conversations that are fun to talk about.
Exactly.
Like I said, one of our previous episodes, I said something to the effect of some smart guy who's smarter than me said, intelligence is determined when you can have a conversation without entertaining it as fact.
Exactly.
Something to that effect.
I mean, but you're right. I mean, all of these ideas, and I mean, a lot of them aren't just ideas. They can be theories. They can be hypotheses. I mean, all of this stirs a deeper side of the mind that you would just generally talking about.
Right, I agree.
I mean, to me, it's much more important in the sense of stirring the imagination portion of your brain as well as your curiosity.
Right.
So I see these things as very important, man.
No, I agree. And it's very important that our listeners don't take what we have said as scientific fact.
Right.
Like, this is a conversation between two guys who are playing at intellectual.
Yeah. We're laymen's.
We truly are laymen's, and we're trying to have a good conversation that makes us think about, flights of fancy, essentially.
Exactly.
So hopefully that's why you're here.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's why I'm here.
And so we got that going for us. But we're going to have some pretty cool episodes coming up in the future, and hopefully pretty soon we're going to have some of our stuff up on YouTube. So we'll be able to throw in some images to make things interesting.
Right.
Maria, who is obviously our producer, she's been working on a lot of cool things for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So look forward to that. And our next episode of Bo&Joe is going to be Joe trying to sell me on something.
Oh, yeah.
The last one we had, man, that was the Society of Mist. That was so hard to follow.
I know. I know.
I've actually done some more research on it, and there's still nothing there.
It's an insanely obscure topic.
Yeah.
But there's a second episode for that we have to talk about.
Great.
It's a very, 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 very deep rabbit hole, man.
Great. Did you have people following you yet?
On what? Oh. I can't talk about
he
that.
said on what?
Well, I can tell you one thing, man. You still have my head ringing. Because that was...
Yep.
Oh, my God.
And that's who you got following you. Maria just handed me a thing. It's the Irish. That's who's following him.
Well, yep. That's for sure.
That's for sure, yeah.
I got some whiskey, though. I'm good.
Wow. Okay. I got nothing...
Hey,
you guys realize we don't live together, so that's an important distinction on multiple levels. But so, bombs away, you know.
No. Oh no.
No, but that's really cool. So, in our final moments, do you have anything you want to add? Anything you want to ask? Anything you want to tell the listener?
Well, the one last thing I want to talk about is we should probably preface or talk about this again once, just when we start talking about the ancient knowledge or the creation myths, because there's a bunch of those. There's a bunch of things in regards to the moon about the creation myths, like Tiamat. In the firmament when it clashed.
There's also
created a second moon, which is something we alluded to in the beginning.
That's right.
There's a lot more information on this.
I forget the nationality, but there's a belief. It's like African or something. There's a belief that the moon was pulled into place by two things.
Yeah. And
it was recorded as having been dropped off in our orbit by these two massive things.
Oh, wow.
So, and they believed at the time they were brother and sister, I don't know.
The Aboriginals, maybe?
That might be it. I remember that it was two people from their pantheon who brought the moon to help us.
Interesting. Yeah, so, we should definitely have a talk about this again, man.
Yep. All right, well, folks, we hope you enjoyed this. We'll be back next week with another episode. I don't know what it is yet, so Joe's keeping that secret.
It's a surprise.
It is a surprise. But for tonight, that's all we got. I'm Bo.
I'm Joe.
And we'll see you guys again next time.
Bye-bye.